The waves crashed against the shore as I watched my son-in-law strut up my private beach, his expensive Italian loafers sinking awkwardly into the sand. Behind him, a man in a suit clutched a briefcase, looking equally out of place. The sight would have been comical if it hadn't been so infuriating. I'm Alexander Morgan, 68 years old, and I've owned Paradise Cove for 4 decades. Well, I've officially owned the modest beach house and the surrounding 5 acres. The rest? That's where things get interesting. Mr. Morgan, my son-in-law, Bradley Thompson, called out with that smug smile I'd grown to detest. I believe you know Mr. Harrison, from Harrison and Associates law firm. I remained in my deck chair, sipping my morning coffee. Taking in the view, Bradley, it's quite something, isn't it? Actually, Bradley produced some papers from his jacket pocket. We're here at the property lines. There seems to be some discrepancy. I've watched many men like Bradley come and go over the years. Young, ambitious, convinced they'd found an angle nobody else noticed. They see an old man living alone in a modest beach house, surrounded by undeveloped oceanfront property, and they smell opportunity. Sarah's worried about you, living out here alone. Bradley continued, name-dropping my daughter like he had any right to speak for her. We think it's time to consider selling. The developers I work with are offering well above market value. I set my coffee down and stood slowly, enjoying how both men tensed slightly. Even at my age, I still cut an imposing figure. Decades of swimming and sailing will do that. Harrison and Associates, I mused. That's downtown, isn't it? Next to the old courthouse. The lawyer straightened his tie. Yes, we've been there for 20 years. Interesting. I walked to the edge of my deck. Tell me, did you do your own survey work, or did you rely on the county records? Bradley's smile faltered. We have complete documentation from the county surveyor's office. The property lines clearly show that I own 5 acres, I finished, centered around this house, and the rest is technically unclaimed county land, right? Exactly. Bradley's confidence returned. Lands that my clients have already begun acquiring through proper channels. I couldn't help but laugh. Those proper channels wouldn't happen to include paying off someone in the surveyor's office, would they? The lawyer shifted uncomfortably. Mr. Morgan, these accusations are completely accurate, I interrupted. You've been dealing with Michael Morgan, haven't you? The county's head surveyor. Bradley's face went pale. How did you know my own brother's name? I smiled. The man you've been bribing for the past 6 months. The waves seemed louder suddenly, or maybe it was just the blood draining from Bradley's face. Mr. Harrison was already backing away, his expensive shoes filling with sand. Those palm trees, I pointed to the line of mature trees stretching across the beach, were planted by my father in 1962. They mark the original property line, 50 acres, not 5. That's impossible, Bradley sputtered. The records are exactly what I wanted them to be. I pulled out my phone, showing them a series of text messages. Michael's been keeping me informed of every meeting, every bribe, every attempt to manipulate the records. Harrison opened his briefcase, frantically shuffling through papers. The surveys clearly show. Show what my brother wanted you to see. I walked down to the beach. Did you really think you were the first to try this? To think you found some clever way to steal my land? Bradley's arrogance had completely evaporated. Mr. Morgan, we can explain. Explain the $50,000 you paid my brother, or the promises you made to the county commissioner. I stood directly in front of him. Everything you've done, every move you've made, has been documented. Would you like to see the recordings? Harrison was already heading back to his car, leaving his client to face the music alone. Smart man. Sarah doesn't know about any of this, Bradley tried. I was just trying to secure our future. By attempting to steal her inheritance, I shook my head. The property belongs to a trust I set up for her years ago. She owns all of it, the full 50 acres. I'm just the caretaker. But the records are a protection mechanism I set up decades ago. Only 5 acres show on public documents. The rest, I gestured to the pristine beachfront, is protected by old deeds and family trusts that don't appear in regular searches. Bradley's face shifted from fear to calculation. Sarah's my wife. If she owns it, she owns it with an ironclad prenuptial agreement that you signed without reading carefully. I smiled. Another document prepared by my brother, by the way. The implications hit him hard. He stumbled back, nearly falling in the sand. This whole time, you've been playing exactly the game I set up. I looked out at the ocean. Every developer who's tried to grab this land has followed the same path. Bribe the surveyor, check the public records, think they're clever. Why? Bradley demanded. Why go through all this? To protect what matters. I turned back to him. This land has been in our family for 3 generations. The house, the beach, the way of life. It's Sarah's birthright. I needed to know if you'd try to take that from her. And Michael, he's really been reporting to you. Every week since you first approached him. The bribes are in a special account. They'll be donated to the local conservation fund. From the house, I heard the sound of a car pulling up. Sarah's car, right on schedule. That would be your wife, I said calmly. Here for our weekly breakfast. Would you like to explain why you're here? Or should I? Bradley looked trapped, his eyes darting between me and the approaching footsteps. Sarah appeared at the top of the deck, her expression shifting from surprise to suspicion. Bradley, what are you doing here? And why is Mr. Harrison running to his car? I met my son-in-law's eyes. Your choice, boy. Tell her the truth, or I will. What followed was painful but necessary. Sarah listened in growing anger as Bradley confessed his scheme, the bribes, the attempted land grab, everything. By the end, she was shaking with rage. You tried to steal my father's home, she demanded. Our family's legacy. Your legacy, I corrected gently. The trust puts it all in your name. I just needed to see if your husband could be trusted with that knowledge. And he failed spectacularly, she said coldly. Get out, Bradley. We'll discuss this with our lawyers. Sarah, please. Now. As Bradley slunk away, following his lawyer's hasty retreat, Sarah turned to me with tears in her eyes. How long have you known? Since he first started asking questions about the property lines. I hugged her tightly. Your mother and I set up these safeguards years ago, knowing someone might try to take advantage. Mom knew. It was her idea, the hidden trusts, the false records. She said our daughter would need protection from people who'd see the land before they saw her worth. Sarah wiped her eyes, looking out at the ocean her grandmother had once gazed upon. All this time, I thought you were just being stubborn about developing the land. The land will be developed someday, I said softly. But by you, for your children, the way you want it. Not by some scheming son-in-law who sees dollar signs instead of heritage. We stood there watching the waves, a father and daughter protecting what mattered most. The palm trees swayed in the breeze, silent sentinels marking more than just property lines. They marked the boundary between greed and legacy, between those who would take and those who would preserve. Bradley had crossed that line. And like all the others before him, he learned why the old man by the sea kept his brother as the county surveyor. Some things are worth protecting. Some lines shouldn't be crossed. And some lessons can only be learned in the shadow of palm trees, where public records end and family trusts begin. A week after Bradley's failed attempt to seize the property, I sat in my brother Michael's office at the county building, reviewing the latest development proposals that had been submitted. 3 more this month, Michael said, spreading out the papers. All of them trying to find loopholes in the property records. This one even hired a private investigator. I chuckled, picking up one particularly ambitious proposal. Let me guess. The PI tried to access the historical archives, where he met our cousin Eleanor, the head archivist. Michael grinned. She gave him exactly what we wanted him to see. Family had always been our strongest defense. The Morgans had held positions throughout county government for generations, not through corruption, but through dedicated service and careful planning. Bradley's law firm is making noise, Michael mentioned, his expression turning serious. They're threatening to expose the fraudulent survey records. Let them. I handed him a file. Sarah's already filed for divorce. Her lawyers have everything they need. The door opened, and Sarah herself walked in, looking more like her mother than ever in her business attire. Uncle Mike, Dad, the developers are here. Right on time. We'd invited the 3 most aggressive development firms to a meeting, supposedly to discuss their proposals. In reality, it was time to teach another lesson about respecting old family legacies. The conference room filled with expensive suits and confident smiles. Bradley was there too, sitting with his firm's representatives, though his confidence had dimmed considerably since our beach confrontation. Gentlemen, I began, standing at the head of the table. You've all submitted proposals for developing Paradise Cove. Before we proceed, I'd like to introduce some people. Sarah stepped forward. Sarah Morgan, rightful owner of the Paradise Cove Trust. Michael Morgan, county surveyor. One by one, family members entered the room. Eleanor Morgan, head archivist. James Morgan, harbor master. Patricia Morgan Wells, environmental protection officer. Thomas Morgan, water rights commissioner. The developers' faces shifted from confusion to dawning comprehension as each person stated their position and relation. For 3 generations, I continued, the Morgan family has served this county. We don't just own Paradise Cove, we protect the entire coastline. Bradley sank lower in his chair as his associates began connecting the dots. Every proposal you submitted, Sarah took over. Every attempt to manipulate records or find loopholes has been documented. Would you like to see your own surveillance photos? James, our harbor master, clicked a remote. The screen filled with images, secret meetings, exchanged envelopes, late-night visits to government offices. That's illegal surveillance. One developer protested. Actually, Patricia smiled, as environmental protection officer, I have full authority to monitor activities that might impact protected coastline. Like, say, attempts to manipulate property records. I picked up a thick folder. This contains evidence of every bribe offered, every attempted manipulation, every false document submitted. Copies have been sent to the state attorney general. You can't do this, Bradley finally spoke. The property laws were written by our grandfather. Eleanor interrupted, pulling out an ancient ledger. Would you like to see the original coastal protection statutes? I have them right here. The room fell silent as the implications sank in. These weren't just random government employees. This was a family that had spent generations building a system of coastal protection. Your proposals are denied, Sarah announced. All of them. Paradise Cove will remain as it is, protected, preserved, and private. Furthermore, Michael added, any future attempts to develop protected coastline will be met with full legal response. Your firms might want to consult your insurance providers about that. The developers filed out, their confidence shattered. Bradley lingered, looking at Sarah with a mixture of anger and admiration. You knew, he said. All this time, you knew what your family had built. No, Bradley. Sarah met his eyes. I learned it by watching you try to destroy it. Now I understand why we protect what we have. After they left, the family gathered on my deck, watching the sunset over our protected coastline. Sarah sat beside me, her mother's old journal in her lap. Mom wrote about this, she said softly. About how Grandpa built the trust system, how each generation added layers of protection. Your mother was the smartest of us all, I replied. She knew someday you'd need to understand the responsibility that comes with this land. The developers will try again, Michael warned. They always do. Let them. Sarah's voice was strong. Now I know what we're protecting. Not just land, but legacy. The palm trees swayed in the evening breeze, marking their eternal line between public record and private trust. Beyond them, the beach stretched untouched, as it had for generations. Bradley's lawyer called, Sarah mentioned. They're dropping all claims in exchange for a quiet divorce. Smart choice. I smiled. Though I'll miss watching him squirm at family gatherings. Laughter rippled through the group. Even in serious moments, the Morgans kept their sense of humor. What now? Sarah asked, looking out at her inheritance. Now? I gestured to the plans she'd been drawing, sustainable developments, conservation areas, public access paths that protected private rights. Now you build something worthy of what we've protected. The family raised their glasses as the sun set on another day at Paradise Cove. Generations of Morgans had kept this place safe, not through force, but through wisdom, patience, and the quiet power of family unity. Bradley and his developers had learned what others discovered before them. Some legacies can't be bought, some traditions can't be broken, and some families can't be divided. Especially not when they're rooted as deeply as the palm trees that guard Paradise Cove. 1 month after the developers' meeting, I stood at the edge of Paradise Cove, watching a team of environmental surveyors work. Sarah had commissioned a complete ecological study, the first step in her vision for responsible stewardship of the land. Found something interesting. Dr. Amanda Chen, the lead marine biologist, called out. This coral reef system, it's unique to this stretch of coastline. Protected species. Sarah, who'd taken to spending her mornings at the cove, smiled knowingly. Like the sea turtle nesting grounds. Exactly. Dr. Chen marked another spot on her tablet. It's almost as if someone's been quietly documenting and protecting these habitats for decades. I finished, sharing a look with Sarah. The truth was, my wife Margaret had been more than just a devoted mother and guardian of the family legacy. She'd been a marine biologist herself, carefully recording the cove's ecological treasures. Her research, hidden away in the family archives, was now proving invaluable. Dad, Sarah called, waving me over to where she stood with Uncle Michael. Show Dr. Chen the underwater caves. The caves had been our secret weapon against developers for years, a complex system that made large-scale construction practically impossible without destroying protected marine habitats. As we walked the beach, Bradley's sleek car pulled up to the property line. He'd been making these drive-bys regularly since the divorce proceedings began, perhaps hoping to find some weakness in our defenses. He never gives up, does he? Michael muttered. He's not alone anymore. Sarah pointed to several other vehicles parked discreetly along the public access road. The developers have hired surveillance teams. I smiled. They still don't understand. Right on cue, Cousin James's harbor patrol boat cruised past, its cameras documenting every vehicle. Aunt Patricia's environmental protection drones buzzed overhead, recording any attempts to access protected areas. Mr. Morgan, Dr. Chen approached with her findings. These habitats, they're not just accidentally preserved. Someone's been actively maintaining them for years. I picked up a worn logbook from my deck chair, Margaret's research journal. My wife, I said softly, handing it to the scientist. She knew these waters better than anyone. Dr. Chen's eyes widened as she flipped through the pages. This is decades of research. Species migration patterns, breeding grounds, coral growth rates. Mom always said the real treasure wasn't the land, Sarah explained, but what lived in these waters. A commotion near the property line drew our attention. Bradley had actually gotten out of his car, speaking intensely on his phone while pointing at the surveyors. Right on schedule, Michael checked his watch. He's probably just learned of the Marine Sanctuary designation. We'd filed the paperwork that morning, using Margaret's research to establish the waters off Paradise Cove as a protected marine habitat. Any development would now require federal approval. Speaking of schedule, Sarah nodded toward the horizon. Here comes the next phase. Mr. Morgan, Dr. Chen called out again. These coral formations, they're perfect for the marine biology program you mentioned. Another part of Sarah's vision. Transforming part of the property into a research station, allowing scientists to study and protect marine life while maintaining the family's privacy. Bradley was now arguing with a harbor patrol officer, James's daughter Katie, who'd recently joined the force. She was calmly explaining the new sanctuary regulations while writing him a citation for unauthorized photography of protected habitats. He still thinks he can find a way in, Sarah observed, even after everything. Men like Bradley only see obstacles to overcome, I replied. They never understand that some things are protected by more than just laws and regulations. As if to emphasize the point, the afternoon wind picked up, setting the palm trees swaying. Those trees had been our first line of defense, but now they were just part of a much larger protection system. The Marine Sanctuary designation, the generational fishing rights, the research partnerships, the family's strategic positions, and most importantly, the community's vested interest in keeping Paradise Cove exactly as it was. Dr. Chen gathered her team for a final consultation. With these findings, we can justify expanding the protected zone another mile offshore. Just like Mom predicted, Sarah said, showing me a passage in Margaret's journal that detailed how the coral reefs would grow and require additional protection. Bradley finally drove away, his latest scheme thwarted by the very things he'd never bothered to understand. The delicate balance of nature, community, and family that made Paradise Cove worth protecting. The fishermen waved as they hauled in their sustainable catches. The surveyors marked the last of their research points, and the palm trees stood guard, their shadows lengthening across the line between public ambition and private legacy. What do you think he'll try next? Sarah wondered. Something clever, no doubt. I smiled. And we'll be ready, just like we've always been. Because Paradise Cove wasn't just a piece of valuable real estate. It was a testament to 3 generations of careful planning, of building protection through service rather than force, of understanding that true wealth lies in preservation rather than development. Bradley and his developers might never understand that. But as I watched Sarah reviewing conservation plans with Dr. Chen, I knew the legacy was in good hands. She'd learned what her mother had always known, that Paradise Cove's greatest strength wasn't in its property lines or legal protections, but in the interconnected web of family, community, and nature that made it truly irreplaceable. The palm trees swayed their agreement as another day ended at Paradise Cove, their roots as deep as the family's commitment to keeping this piece of paradise exactly as it should be. Protected, preserved, perfect. 6 months after the Marine Sanctuary designation, I sat on my deck watching a very different scene unfold at Paradise Cove. Where developers once plotted, marine biology students now conducted research. Where Bradley once schemed, local fishermen taught traditional sustainable practices. Sarah had transformed her mother's vision into reality. The small research station, built to blend perfectly with the landscape, now hosted scientists from around the world. More importantly, it provided legal reinforcement for our protection of the cove. Final paperwork came through, Sarah announced, joining me with her morning coffee. Bradley signed off on everything. The divorce is official. And the development companies all dropped their claims. She smiled. Turns out, trying to develop a federally protected marine sanctuary is bad for business. The morning sun caught the plaque we'd installed yesterday. The Margaret Morgan Marine Research Center. My wife's legacy, now officially recognized and protected. Got an interesting call from Bradley's father, I mentioned. He wants to donate to the research center. Seems he's had a change of heart since seeing the Coral Reef Preservation Project. People change when they understand what they're really fighting against, Sarah mused, or what they're fighting for. Down on the beach, Dr. Chen was leading a group of local children on a marine life tour, part of our new community outreach program, teaching the next generation why Paradise Cove needed protection. Mom's last journal entry, Sarah said, pulling out the worn book. She wrote it the week before she passed. Listen to this. Paradise Cove isn't just about keeping others out. It's about preserving something precious for those who understand its value. Someday, Sarah will need to find the balance between protection and purpose. When she does, she'll understand why we built all these safeguards. Not to hoard our treasure, but to share it wisely. The morning breeze carried the sound of children's laughter as they discovered tide pools teeming with life. Above them, the palm trees stood sentinel, marking not just a property line anymore, but the boundary between exploitation and stewardship. Bradley drove by yesterday, Sarah said, but instead of plotting, he actually stopped to watch the research team. I think he finally gets it. What did your mother always say? Some people need to lose something before they can see its real value. The fishermen's boats dotted the horizon, their sustainable practices now part of the research center's ongoing studies. Uncle Michael's surveys have been updated to include marine habitat mapping. Aunt Patricia's environmental drones monitored both wildlife and potential intruders. We're not just protecting land anymore, Sarah realized. We're protecting an entire ecosystem, environmental and human. That's what your mother understood all those years ago. Why she started the research, documented everything, built relationships with the fishing families. A harbor patrol boat cruised past, Cousin Katie keeping watch, just as her father had before her. The next generation of Morgans was already taking its place in the protection of Paradise Cove. The developers won't stop trying, I warned. There's too much money involved. Let them try. Sarah's voice carried her mother's strength. We're stronger now than ever. Not just because of laws or sanctuaries, but because people understand what we're protecting. As if to prove her point, a pod of dolphins surfaced near the research station. Dr. Chen's young students squealed with delight. Even the fishermen paused their work to watch. This was the true victory, not just defeating Bradley and his developers, but creating something that proved why Paradise Cove needed to remain as it was. Your mother would be proud, I said softly, not just of what you've protected, but of what you've built. The palm trees swayed in agreement, their shadows falling across the beach where so many had tried to change what should remain unchanged. They marked more than just a boundary now. They stood as a reminder that some legacies grow stronger with each generation. Bradley and his developers had taught us an unexpected lesson. In trying to take Paradise Cove, they had forced us to build something even more powerful than our original protections. They had helped us create a living testament to Margaret's vision. The morning sun climbed higher, another day beginning at Paradise Cove. In the distance, the research boats headed out, carrying scientists instead of developers, hope instead of greed. Sarah squeezed my hand, both of us watching the scene her mother had imagined long ago. We did it, Dad. We really did it. Yes, we had. We turned Paradise Cove from a target into a treasure, from a battleground into a sanctuary. And in doing so, we'd proven what Margaret had always known. Some places aren't meant to be developed. Some legacies aren't meant to be sold. And some families never stop protecting what matters most. The palm trees stood tall, guarding it all.